In a quiet suburban neighborhood, life seemed peaceful for most residents. The streets were lined with modest houses, children played in the yards, and neighbors greeted each other warmly as they went about their daily routines. But beneath this calm exterior, danger lurked in the shadows. A notorious gang known as the Iron Fangs had taken control of the area, spreading fear wherever they went. For years, they had terrorized local businesses, demanding protection money and intimidating anyone who dared to oppose them. Their reputation was built on violence, cruelty, and an unshakable grip over the community. Among their many victims was Sarah Thompson, a single mother struggling to make ends meet while raising her young son, Ethan. To those who knew her, Sarah appeared to be just another hardworking woman trying to provide a good life for her child. She worked long hours at a small cafe downtown, juggling shifts to pay the bills, and spent her evenings helping Ethan with his homework. Despite the challenges she faced, Sarah always managed to greet people with a warm smile, earning respect from her coworkers and neighbors alike. What no one suspected, not even the Iron Fangs, was that Sarah wasn't just another helpless victim. Beneath her calm demeanor lay secrets far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Sarah's past was something she kept carefully hidden, locked away like a treasure chest buried deep beneath the ocean floor. Years ago, before settling into her quiet life in the suburbs, she had served as one of the most skilled Navy SEALs in the United States. Her time in the military had been marked by daring missions, grueling training, and countless acts of bravery. She had earned respect and admiration from her fellow soldiers, becoming known not only for her physical strength but also for her sharp mind and strategic thinking. However, after over a decade of service, Sarah decided it was time to leave that world behind. She wanted a fresh start, a chance to live a normal life away from the chaos and bloodshed of combat. And so she traded her uniform for civilian clothes, moved to a quiet town, and focused on building a new future with her son. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Sarah enjoyed the simplicity of her new life. She loved watching Ethan grow up, teaching him right from wrong and seeing the joy in his eyes when he achieved something new. But all of that changed when the Iron Fangs set their sights on her. It started subtly at first. A knock on the door late at night, a menacing voice demanding protection money in exchange for leaving her property alone. At first, Sarah tried ignoring them, hoping they would move on to easier targets. But the Iron Fangs weren't the kind to give up easily. They returned again and again, each visit growing more aggressive than the last. Marcus Kane, the leader of the Iron Fangs, was particularly relentless. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a cruel smile and cold, calculating eyes, Marcus thrived on instilling fear in others. He took pride in breaking people down until they had no choice but to submit to his demands. When Sarah refused to pay, claiming she simply couldn't afford it, Marcus sneered at her defiance. "You think you're tough, huh?" he spat during one encounter. "We'll see how long you can hold out." His words sent chills down her spine, but Sarah refused to show weakness. She stood her ground, determined not to let these criminals take what little she had worked so hard to build. As the pressure mounted, Sarah found herself torn between two worlds. On one hand, she wanted nothing more than to protect Ethan's innocence, to shield him from the harsh realities of violence and crime. On the other hand, every fiber of her being screamed to fight back, to draw upon the skills and instincts she had honed during her years as a Navy SEAL. Late at night, as Ethan slept peacefully in his room, Sarah often sat by the window staring out into the darkness. Her mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. Should she report the gang to the police? Or should she take matters into her own hands, knowing full well the risks involved? One evening, after yet another threatening visit from Marcus, Sarah reached her breaking point. As she cleaned up the mess left behind by the gang members who had barged into her home earlier that day, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked tired, worn down by fear and uncertainty. But beneath the exhaustion there was still fire in her eyes, a spark of determination that refused to be extinguished. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah climbed up to the attic and retrieved an old duffel bag she had stored away years ago. Inside were items she hadn't touched since leaving the military: a tactical vest, knives, and other tools of her former trade. As she unpacked the contents, memories of her past came flooding back. Memories of stealth missions, close calls, and the unwavering resolve that had defined her career as a SEAL. Holding one of the knives in her hand, Sarah felt a strange sense of clarity wash over her. She realized that running or hiding wouldn't solve anything. If the Iron Fangs thought they could intimidate her, they were gravely mistaken. Sarah wasn't just a single mother fighting to survive. She was a warrior biding her time, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment had come. With renewed purpose, Sarah began devising a plan to take down the Iron Fangs once and for all. Little did they know, their days of terrorizing the neighborhood and Sarah were numbered. Over the next few days, Sarah went about her routine as though nothing had changed. She dropped Ethan off at school, worked her shift at the cafe, and even exchanged polite smiles with Marcus when he swaggered into the shop to taunt her further. But behind the scenes, she was meticulously gathering information about the gang's operations. Using skills honed during countless covert missions, Sarah mapped out their movements, identified key locations, and pinpointed weaknesses in their defenses. She knew that brute force alone wouldn't be enough to bring them down. She needed strategy, precision, and timing. By the end of the week, Sarah had everything she needed to launch her counterattack. That night, dressed in black tactical gear and armed with the tools of her trade, Sarah set out to confront the Iron Fangs. Moving silently through the shadows, she infiltrated their hideout, a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, she disabled security cameras, disarmed guards without making a sound, and planted evidence linking Marcus to several unsolved crimes. By morning, police raids descended upon the warehouse, arresting half the gang members, including Marcus himself. News of the takedown spread quickly through the neighborhood, leaving everyone astonished. No one suspected that the quiet, unassuming woman they passed on the street each day was capable of such extraordinary feats. For Sarah, the victory was bittersweet. While she had succeeded in protecting her family and sending a message to the Iron Fangs, she couldn't shake the feeling that her actions might put her son in greater danger. Determined to ensure Ethan's safety, Sarah vowed to remain vigilant, ready to defend her family against any threat that came their way. Life eventually settled back into its rhythm, with Sarah finding solace in simple joys, watching Ethan play soccer, sharing laughter with coworkers, and enjoying quiet moments on her porch. Though she hoped never to revisit her violent past, she knew one thing for certain: if anyone dared threaten her family again, they would learn firsthand why she was once called the most feared Navy SEAL alive. The days following the police raid on the Iron Fangs hideout brought a fragile sense of peace to Sarah's neighborhood. For the first time in months, residents dared to step outside without glancing over their shoulders. Local shopkeepers no longer trembled at the sight of shadowy figures lurking near their stores. Even Ethan seemed more carefree, laughing and playing with his friends as though a weight had been lifted from the entire community. But while everyone else celebrated the gang's downfall, Sarah remained cautious. She knew better than to believe the danger was truly over. Marcus Kane, the leader of the Iron Fangs, had been arrested, but his arrest didn't mean the end of the gang. In fact, it only created a power vacuum within their ranks. A rival faction, led by Marcus's second-in-command, Derek Cole, quickly rose to fill the void. Unlike Marcus, who relied on brute force and intimidation, Derek was cunning and calculating. He had always operated behind the scenes, orchestrating schemes and pulling strings while Marcus took the spotlight. Now, with Marcus locked away, Derek saw an opportunity to seize control, and he wasn't about to let anyone stand in his way. Derek wasted no time making his presence known. Within days of Marcus's arrest, Sarah began noticing subtle signs that the Iron Fangs were regrouping. Her car tires were slashed one morning, forcing her to call a mechanic before heading to work. Threatening notes appeared taped to her front door, warning her to stay out of their business. One evening, as she returned home from the cafe, she found her mailbox smashed to pieces, its contents scattered across her lawn. Each act of vandalism sent a clear message. They weren't done with her yet. Sarah tried to remain calm for Ethan's sake. She reassured him that everything was fine whenever he asked about the strange occurrences around their house, but inside she felt a growing unease. Derek's actions suggested something far more sinister than mere retaliation. It was personal now. They weren't just targeting her property, they were testing her resolve. And if she showed even the slightest hint of weakness, they would pounce. Late one night, unable to sleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at the latest threatening note she'd received. The words scrawled across the paper, "You think you're safe? Think again," sent chills down her spine. Yet instead of fear, anger began to simmer within her. These cowards thought they could intimidate her into submission. Did they really believe she would crumble under pressure? Sarah clenched her fists, her mind racing with memories of countless missions where she faced far greater dangers than this ragtag group of thugs. Her thoughts drifted back to her days as a Navy SEAL. She remembered crawling through dense jungles, under enemy fire, scaling cliffs in pitch darkness and disarming explosives with precision timing. Those experiences had taught her not only how to survive, but also how to thrive in high-stakes situations. Back then, she hadn't hesitated to take bold action when necessary. Why should now be any different? Slowly, a plan began forming in her mind. If Derek and his crew wanted a fight, she would give them one, but on her terms. Over the next few days, Sarah resumed her routine, careful not to reveal any change in her demeanor. She dropped Ethan off at school, worked her shifts at the cafe, and greeted customers with her usual smile. Meanwhile, she quietly prepared for what lay ahead. After hours, she spent time reviewing maps of the town, identifying potential locations where Derek's faction might gather. She dusted off old equipment from her duffel bag, ensuring every tool was in perfect condition. Most importantly, she rehearsed scenarios in her head, visualizing every possible outcome of her confrontation with Derek. One afternoon, as Sarah served coffee to a group of regulars at the cafe, Derek himself walked in. Tall and lean, with sharp features and piercing eyes, he exuded an air of confidence that made others uneasy. He approached the counter, leaning casually against it as though he owned the place. "Heard you've been causing trouble," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You must have some big connections to take down Marcus like that." Sarah met his gaze steadily, refusing to flinch. "I don't need connections," she replied, coolly. "Just common sense and a little courage." Her tone carried an edge that caught Derek off guard. For a moment he studied her face, searching for cracks in her composure. Finding none, he smirked and leaned closer. "Courage, huh? Well, we'll see how brave you are when things get worse." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving an unsettling silence in his wake. That night, Sarah decided it was time to turn the tables. She knew confronting Derek directly would be risky, but she also understood that waiting for him to strike first put Ethan in unnecessary danger. Instead, she devised a plan to draw Derek and his crew into a trap. Using scraps of information gathered from eavesdropping on conversations and observing patterns in their behavior, Sarah identified an abandoned construction site on the outskirts of town, a perfect location for an ambush. The site offered plenty of hiding spots and limited exits, giving her the advantage she needed. The following day, Sarah sent a message to Derek through one of his lackeys who frequented the cafe. "Tell your boss I want to talk," she instructed, keeping her tone firm. "Alone. Midnight tonight at the old construction site. If he's man enough, he'll show up." The messenger hesitated, clearly intimidated by her boldness, but eventually nodded and left. Sarah knew Derek wouldn't resist the challenge. His ego wouldn't allow it. As midnight approached, Sarah geared up once more, slipping into her tactical vest and arming herself with tools from her duffel bag. She kissed Ethan goodbye, promising him she'd be back soon, and quietly slipped out of the house. The drive to the construction site felt surreal, almost dreamlike. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, sharpening her senses and steadying her nerves. When she arrived, The area was eerily silent, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight. Shadows danced across the half-finished structures, creating an atmosphere both eerie and exhilarating. It wasn't long before Derek and his crew arrived, armed and arrogant. They spread out cautiously, scanning the area for signs of a trap. But they were too late. Before they could react, Sarah emerged from the shadows, moving with the speed and precision of a predator. She struck swiftly, disabling two men before they even realized what hit them. Chaos erupted as the rest of the gang scrambled to respond, but Sarah was always one step ahead. Using her surroundings to her advantage, she climbed scaffolding, hurled debris, and used hand-to-hand combat techniques to incapacitate her opponents. By the time the dust settled, Derek stood alone, battered and bloodied. Sarah stepped forward, her expression cold and unyielding. "This ends now," she said, her voice cutting through the night like steel. Derek tried to protest, but she cut him off. "If you or anyone else comes near me or my son again, I won't. Stop until there's nothing left of your gang." Her words carried the weight of absolute certainty, leaving Derek trembling with fear. With the threat neutralized, Sarah walked away, disappearing into the darkness. She returned home to find Ethan fast asleep, oblivious to the battle his mother had fought to keep him safe. As she tucked him back into bed, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead might still hold challenges, but for now, her family was safe, and that was all that mattered. The quiet hours after Sarah's confrontation with Derek Cole brought a sense of uneasy calm to her life. She had returned home that night, adrenaline still coursing through her veins, but exhaustion quickly settled in as the reality of what she'd done sank deeper. For Ethan, nothing seemed amiss. He woke up cheerful the next morning, eager to eat breakfast and head off to school. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this chapter wasn't fully closed yet. Derek might have been defeated, but the Iron Fangs were like weeds. Cut one down and another would sprout in its place if not dealt with properly. Over the next few days, Sarah kept a watchful eye on her surroundings. She checked her car before driving anywhere, made sure all doors and windows were locked at night, and even avoided lingering too long outside her house. Her co-workers at the cafe noticed her heightened alertness but attributed it to stress from recent events. "You've been through so much," one of them said sympathetically during a break. "It's okay to take some time for yourself." Sarah nodded politely, though she knew self-care wouldn't solve her problems this time around. If anything, she needed to stay sharper than ever. Despite her vigilance, there were no immediate signs of retaliation from the Iron Fangs. No slashed tires, no threatening notes, no suspicious figures lurking near her home. At first, Sarah wondered if Derek's defeat had finally broken their spirit, or perhaps scared them into leaving her alone. But deep down she doubted it. Gangs like theirs didn't retreat easily. They thrived on fear and chaos, and backing down now would mean losing face entirely. Sooner or later they would strike again, and when they did, Sarah wanted to be ready. Her nights became restless. Sleep eluded her as her mind replayed every possible scenario of how the Iron Fangs could retaliate. What if they targeted Ethan? What if they tried to hurt someone else close to her? These thoughts gnawed at her relentlessly, pushing her to take action rather than wait for disaster to strike. One evening, unable to sit still any longer, Sarah retrieved her duffel bag from the attic once more. She spread out the contents on her bed, knives, rope, flashbang devices, and other tools of her trade, and began inspecting each item meticulously. As she worked, memories flooded back of her training days in the Navy SEALs. Back then, preparation had been second nature to her. Every mission required careful planning, attention to detail, and an understanding of both the enemy and the environment. Now she applied those same principles to her current situation. She studied maps of the neighborhood, noting escape routes, and potential ambush points. She rehearsed hand-to-hand combat moves until her muscles burned, and most importantly, she fortified her mental resolve, reminding herself why she was doing all of this. For Ethan. For the promise of a safe and peaceful future. But Sarah also knew that relying solely on brute force wouldn't suffice. She needed allies, people who could help without putting themselves directly in harm's way. After much deliberation, she decided to confide in two people, her best friend Lisa, who owned the local bookstore, and Mr. Harris, an elderly neighbor, who had always looked out for her and Ethan. Both had witnessed the gang's reign of terror firsthand and shared her desire to see them gone for good. When Sarah approached Lisa, she found her friend sitting behind the counter of her cozy shop, surrounded by shelves stacked high with books. "Lisa," Sarah began hesitantly, pulling up a chair across from her. "There's something I need to tell you." Over the next hour, Sarah revealed fragments of her past, the years she spent as a Navy SEAL, the skills she possessed, and the role she had played in dismantling part of the Iron Gang. Lisa listened intently, her eyes widening with disbelief at times but never wavering in support. "I don't know how I can help," Lisa admitted when Sarah finished speaking, "but you can count on me." Encouraged by Lisa's response, Sarah visited Mr. Harris later that day. The elderly man greeted her warmly, inviting her inside his modest home. As they sat together in his living room, Sarah explained the situation as honestly as she could. Unlike Lisa, Mr. Harris already suspected there was more to Sarah than met the eye. "I always figured you were tougher than you let on," he chuckled, patting her hand reassuringly. "Just tell me what I need to do." With their help secured, Sarah devised a plan to dismantle the Iron Fangs once and for all. While Lisa agreed to keep an ear out for rumors circulating among customers, Mr. Harris volunteered to monitor unusual activity in the neighborhood, using his vantage point from his upstairs window. Meanwhile, Sarah focused on gathering intelligence about the gang's remaining members. She scoured social media profiles, eavesdropped on conversations at the cafe, and even followed leads late at night, moving silently through the streets like a shadow. Her efforts paid off sooner than expected. One evening, while walking home from work, Sarah overheard two men talking in hushed tones near a convenience store. From their conversation, she learned that Derek had managed to regroup a small faction of loyal followers. They were planning to meet at an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, a location she recognized from her earlier research. Armed with this information, Sarah knew exactly what to do next. That night, she donned her tactical gear once more, slipping quietly out of the house while Ethan slept soundly. The drive to the warehouse felt surreal, almost dreamlike. Adrenaline surged through her body, sharpening her senses and steadying her nerves. When she arrived, the area was eerily silent, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight. Shadows danced across the crumbling walls, creating an atmosphere both eerie and exhilarating. Sarah moved with precision, scaling a nearby fence and slipping into the compound undetected. Inside, she disabled security cameras and disarmed guards stationed outside the building. Once inside, she planted evidence linking several key members of the Iron Fangs to illegal activities, ensuring their arrests would stick. By dawn, police sirens echoed in the distance as officers stormed the warehouse, rounding up the remaining gang members. For Sarah, the victory was bittersweet. While she had succeeded in neutralizing the threat against her family, she couldn't shake the weight of what she had done. Violence wasn't something she took lightly, even when justified. Still, she reminded herself that her actions had protected not just her son, but countless others in the community who had suffered under the Iron Fang's tyranny. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get. The neighborhood breathed easier, free from the constant fear that had gripped it for so long. Children played outside without worry, and neighbors exchanged warm greetings once more. For Sarah, the experience served as a reminder of why she had chosen to leave her violent past behind. Yet, it also reaffirmed her commitment to protecting those she loved, no matter the cost. Though she hoped never to revisit her old life, Sarah knew one thing for certain. If anyone dared threaten her family again, they would learn firsthand why she was once called the most feared Navy SEAL alive. The weeks following the takedown of the Iron Fangs brought a fragile sense of peace to Sarah's neighborhood. For the first time in what felt like forever, residents began to relax. Children played freely in the streets, shopkeepers no longer flinched at the sound of approaching footsteps, and even late-night walks felt safer than they had in years. But while most people celebrated the gang's demise, Sarah remained cautious. She knew better than anyone that criminals like the Iron Fangs didn't disappear entirely. They simply went underground, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Derek. Cole's arrest had been a major blow to the gang, but rumors began circulating that some of his loyal followers were still at large. These remnants operated in smaller groups, staying out of sight and avoiding attention. They weren't strong enough to reclaim their former territory yet, but Sarah could feel their presence lurking in the shadows. It was subtle. A broken window. Here, a stolen package there, but enough to keep her on edge. Her instincts told her the danger wasn't over, and she trusted those instincts implicitly. Sarah's days became a balancing act between maintaining normalcy for Ethan and preparing for whatever might come next. During the day, she worked tirelessly at the cafe, serving customers with her usual warm smile. To the outside world, she appeared to be just another hard-working single mother trying to make ends meet. But behind closed doors, she was anything but ordinary. At night, after Ethan fell asleep, Sarah transformed into the disciplined warrior she once was. She reviewed maps of the neighborhood, studied patterns of suspicious activity, and fine-tuned her combat skills. Every movement, every decision was calculated, born from years of training as a Navy SEAL. One evening, as Sarah cleaned up after dinner, Lisa stopped by unexpectedly. Her friend carried a worried expression, clutching a notebook, filled with scribbled notes. "I heard something today," Lisa said, sitting down at Sarah's kitchen table. "A couple of guys came into the store earlier. They were talking about how the Iron Fangs aren't done, not completely. Apparently they're planning something big." Sarah listened intently, her jaw tightening as Lisa recounted the details. One name kept coming up: Victor Lang, a ruthless enforcer who had once worked under Derek but now sought to rebuild the gang under his own leadership. Victor was known for his cunning and brutality. Unlike Marcus or Derek, he didn't rely on intimidation alone. He preferred calculated strikes designed to maximize chaos. If he truly intended to revive the Iron Fangs, Sarah knew it would only be a matter of time before he came for her. After all, she had dismantled the gang twice already. In Victor's eyes, she was both a threat and an obstacle that needed to be eliminated. That night, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling as her mind raced with possibilities. She thought about Ethan sleeping peacefully in the next room, oblivious to the storm brewing outside their home. Protecting him was her top priority, but she couldn't shield him from everything. Sooner or later, she would have to confront Victor, and, when that moment came, she wanted to be ready. Over the next few days, Sarah intensified her preparations. She reached out to Mr. Harris, asking him to keep an extra watchful eye on the neighborhood. "Let me know if you see anything unusual," she instructed. "No matter how small it seems, I need to know." Mr. Harris nodded solemnly, promising to do whatever he could to help. Meanwhile, Sarah spent hours refining her strategy. She mapped out potential locations where Victor's crew might gather, identified escape routes, and rehearsed scenarios in her head until she could picture every possible outcome. Her research led her to an old industrial park on the outskirts of town, a cluster of abandoned warehouses that had long been a haven for criminal activity. It was the perfect place for Victor to regroup, hidden from prying eyes and far enough from residential areas to avoid detection. Sarah decided to investigate further, knowing it was risky but unwilling to wait for trouble to find her. Late one night, dressed in black tactical gear and armed with tools from her duffel bag, Sarah set out for the industrial park. The drive took her past darkened streets and empty fields, the silence broken only by the hum of her car engine. When she arrived, she parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, moving silently through the shadows. The air was thick, with tension as she slipped between crumbling buildings, her senses razor-sharp. As she neared one of the larger warehouses, Sarah noticed faint lights flickering inside. Voices drifted through the cracks in the walls, low and urgent, discussing plans and logistics. Peering through a gap in the boards covering a window, she saw a group of men gathered around a makeshift table. Maps and blueprints were spread out before them, and standing at the center was Victor himself. Tall and muscular, with cold, calculating eyes, he exuded an aura of menace that sent chills down Sarah's spine. She observed them for several minutes, memorizing faces and noting key details. Then, just as quietly as she had arrived, she retreated into the darkness. Back in her car, she allowed herself a moment to process what she had seen. Victor was clearly planning something significant, an operation that would require manpower, resources, and coordination. Whatever it was, Sarah knew she had to stop it before it gained momentum. The next morning, Sarah called a meeting with Lisa and Mr. Harris. Over coffee at Lisa's bookstore, she laid out her findings and explained her plan. "Victor is dangerous," she warned. "He's smart, methodical, and won't hesitate to hurt innocent people to achieve his goals. We need to act fast." Together, they devised a strategy to disrupt Victor's plans without putting themselves directly in harm's way. Lisa agreed to spread misinformation among local gossip circles, planting fake tips about police raids and surveillance in the area. Mr. Harris, meanwhile, volunteered to report any suspicious vehicles or individuals spotted near the industrial park. With her allies in place, Sarah turned her focus to infiltrating Victor's operation. That night, she returned to the warehouse, this time carrying devices designed to disable security systems and gather intelligence. Moving like a ghost, she slipped past guards and planted listening devices in strategic locations. By dawn, she had everything she needed to piece together Victor's plan, a series of coordinated attacks on local businesses, timed to coincide with a major community event scheduled for the following weekend. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Sarah sprang into action. She contacted the police anonymously, providing detailed information about Victor's plans and the evidence she had gathered. Officers launched a preemptive raid on the industrial park, arresting several gang members and confiscating weapons and supplies. Victor managed to escape during the chaos, but his operation was effectively dismantled. For Sarah, the victory was bittersweet. While she had succeeded in thwarting Victor's plans, she knew he wouldn't give up easily. Men like him thrived on revenge, and she had made herself a target by crossing him. Still, she refused to let fear dictate her life. With Lisa and Mr. Harris by her side, she vowed to remain vigilant, ready to protect her family and her community, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm. Ethan laughed and played with his friends, blissfully unaware of the battles his mother fought to keep him safe. For Sarah, these quiet moments were precious, a reminder of why she had chosen to leave her violent past behind. Yet, deep down, she knew one thing for certain. If Victor or anyone else dared threaten her family again, they would learn firsthand why she was once called the most feared Navy SEAL alive. The aftermath of Victor Lang's failed operation brought a renewed sense of hope to Sarah's neighborhood. The police raids had dismantled much of what remained of the Iron Fangs, scattering their remnants and leaving the community safer than it had been in years. Local businesses breathed easier, knowing they wouldn't have to pay protection money or live in fear of vandalism. Parents watched their children play outside without constantly looking over their shoulders. For most residents, life seemed to be returning to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after months of terror. But Sarah knew better. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, Victor was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Men like him didn't give up easily. They retreated, regrouped, and plotted their next move. Sarah had seen enough during her time as a Navy SEAL to recognize the signs of a predator biding its time. And though she had managed to disrupt his plans twice now, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was far from finished. If anything, each defeat only fueled his desire for revenge, and Sarah was at the top of his list. Her days became a delicate balancing act. On the surface, she maintained the appearance of a regular single mother, working long hours at the cafe, helping Ethan with his homework, and attending school events to support her son. But beneath the calm exterior, she was constantly on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards at night, every unfamiliar car parked near her house, every stranger lingering too long on her street made her heart race. She tried not to let her anxiety show around Ethan, but sometimes the weight of it all pressed down so heavily that even her warm smile felt forced. To cope, Sarah leaned on Lisa and Mr. Harris more than ever. Together they formed an informal network of vigilance. Lisa kept tabs on rumors circulating through the community, using her bookstore as a hub for information. Mr. Harris monitored the neighborhood from his upstairs window, noting any unusual activity and reporting back to Sarah immediately. Their support gave her some peace of mind, but she knew the ultimate responsibility rested on her shoulders. If Victor came for her, she would face him alone. One evening, as Sarah tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. "Mom," he asked softly, "are we safe now?" The question caught her off guard. How could she explain to a child that safety was never guaranteed? That even when things seemed peaceful, danger could still be lurking just out of sight? Instead of dwelling on those harsh truths, she smiled reassuringly and kissed his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart," she said. "We're safe. I'll always make sure of that." As she turned off the light and closed his bedroom door, Sarah felt a pang of guilt. She hated lying to him, even if it was meant to protect him. But how could she tell him about the battles she fought behind the scenes? About the nights she spent planning strategies, rehearsing combat moves, and preparing for the worst? No. Ethan deserved a childhood free from fear. It was her job to carry the burden so he wouldn't have to. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at the latest intel she had gathered. Through her careful surveillance, she had learned that Victor was hiding out in a secluded cabin deep in the woods on the outskirts of town. He had surrounded himself with a small group of loyal followers, men who were desperate and willing to do whatever it took to restore the Iron Fang's power. They weren't strong enough to launch another large-scale attack, not yet. But Sarah knew they were planning something personal. Her instincts told her that Victor wouldn't stop until he had settled the score with her. He saw her as the reason for his downfall, the obstacle standing between him and dominance. To him, taking her down wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving his strength and re-establishing control. Sarah understood this mindset all too well. She had encountered men like Victor before during her military career. They thrived on chaos and destruction, feeding off the fear of others to fuel their own egos. Determined not to let Victor dictate the terms of their confrontation, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. Over the next few days, she meticulously planned her approach. Using skills honed during countless covert missions, she mapped out the terrain surrounding the cabin, identified potential entry points, and studied patrol patterns of Victor's guards. She also prepared herself mentally, visualizing every possible scenario and rehearsing her responses. By the time she was ready to act, she felt confident in her ability to handle whatever came her way. On the night of the operation, Sarah geared up once more, slipping into her tactical vest and arming herself with tools from her duffel bag. Before leaving, she left a note for Ethan just in case. "I love you more than anything," she wrote. "No matter what happens, always remember that." With a heavy heart, she kissed him goodbye and quietly slipped out of the house. The drive to the cabin felt surreal, almost dreamlike. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, sharpening her senses and steadying her nerves. When she arrived, the forest was eerily silent, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight. Shadows danced across the trees, creating an atmosphere both haunting and exhilarating. Sarah moved like a shadow herself, scaling fences, disabling security, cameras, and disarming guards without making a sound. When she finally reached the cabin, she found Victor inside, pacing angrily as he barked orders at his men. His frustration was palpable. He knew he was running out of options. Sarah waited for the right moment, then stepped into the room, her presence commanding silence. For a brief second, shock registered on Victor's face. Then, anger took over. "You think you can just walk in here and take me down?" he snarled. Sarah didn't respond. Instead, she acted. Moving with precision and speed, she disarmed one of Victor's men and used his weapon against him. Chaos erupted as the rest of the gang scrambled to respond, But Sarah was always one step ahead. She used the environment to her advantage, hurling objects, climbing furniture, and striking with calculated blows. Within minutes, the fight was over. Victor stood alone, battered and defeated. Breathing heavily, Sarah approached him, her expression cold and unyielding. "This ends now," she said firmly. "If you come near me or my family again, I won't stop until there's nothing left of you." Her words carried the weight of absolute certainty, leaving Victor trembling with fear. Without another word, she walked away, disappearing into the night. By morning, police had raided the cabin, arresting Victor and his remaining followers. News of their capture spread quickly through the neighborhood, leaving everyone astonished. No one suspected that the quiet, unassuming woman they passed on the street each day was capable of such extraordinary feats. For Sarah, the victory was bittersweet. While she had succeeded in protecting her family, she couldn't shake the toll it had taken on her. Violence wasn't something she took lightly, even when justified. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to its rhythm. Ethan laughed and played with his friends, blissfully unaware of the battles his mother had fought to keep him safe. For Sarah, these quiet moments were precious, a reminder of why she had chosen to leave her violent past behind. Yet, deep down, she knew one thing for certain. If Victor or anyone else dared threaten her family again, they would learn firsthand why she was once called the most feared Navy SEAL alive. The days following Victor Lang's arrest brought a profound sense of relief to Sarah's neighborhood. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, residents could truly breathe easy. The iron fangs, once a looming shadow over their lives, were finally gone, or so it seemed. Local businesses reopened their doors without fear of extortion, children played freely in the streets, and neighbors exchanged warm greetings as though reclaiming pieces of their stolen peace. But for Sarah, the victory felt hollow. She had dismantled the gang twice now, yet she couldn't shake the lingering unease that came with knowing men like Victor existed in the world. Her nights remained restless. Though Ethan slept soundly in his room, Sarah often found herself sitting by the window staring out into the darkness. Her mind replayed every moment of her confrontation with Victor, the adrenaline, the danger, the sheer determination that had driven her forward. Each memory served as a reminder of who she was beneath the surface, a warrior forged in the fires of combat, someone capable of extraordinary feats but burdened by the scars they left behind. Yet, despite everything she had endured, Sarah refused to let fear dictate her life. She had fought too hard and sacrificed too much to allow herself to be consumed by paranoia. To help ease the tension, Lisa and Mr. Harris continued to check in on her regularly. Their unwavering support became a lifeline during those uncertain times. Lisa often invited Sarah over for coffee, encouraging her to talk about her feelings even when words failed her. "You've done more than anyone could ask," Lisa would say gently. "It's okay to take care of yourself now." Meanwhile, Mr. Harris kept watch over the neighborhood, reporting back whenever he noticed anything unusual. Together they formed a protective circle around Sarah and Ethan, ensuring no threat slipped through unnoticed. Still, Sarah knew she couldn't rely solely on others to keep her family safe. Her instincts told her that while the iron gangs might have been defeated, there were always other dangers lurking in the shadows. Criminals like Marcus, Derek, and Victor weren't anomalies. They were symptoms of a larger problem plaguing communities across the country. And while Sarah couldn't single-handedly solve systemic issues like poverty, corruption, or greed, she could do her part to make her corner of the world safer. With this mindset, Sarah began channeling her energy into something positive. She started volunteering at a local youth center, teaching self-defense classes to teenagers after work. At first, the idea had been daunting. Stepping into a leadership role outside her comfort zone wasn't easy. But as she watched the kids grow more confident under her guidance, she realized how fulfilling it was to empower others. Many of them reminded her of Ethan, young, full of potential, and deserving of a future free from violence. Through her lessons, she hoped to instill not only physical skills but also values like discipline, resilience, and courage. Ethan, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of the battles his mother had fought to protect him. To him, Sarah was simply Mom, the woman who made his favorite meals, cheered him on at soccer games, and tucked him in at night. He loved her fiercely, trusting her implicitly, without realizing the weight she carried daily. Sometimes when Sarah caught glimpses of him laughing with his friends or hugging her tightly after school, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could have a normal life, that perhaps the sacrifices she had made were worth it. But reality wasn't so simple. One evening, as Sarah cleaned up after dinner, a knock sounded at the door. Opening it cautiously, she found Officer Ramirez standing on her porch, his expression grim. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Inside, he explained that Victor had managed to escape custody during transport to prison. Details were scarce, but authorities believed he was still in the area, possibly seeking revenge. Sarah listened silently, her heart pounding in her chest. She had expected as much. Men like Victor didn't give up easily. But hearing it confirmed sent a fresh wave of dread coursing through her veins. That night, Sarah fortified their home, checking locks and setting up makeshift alarms near windows and doors. She retrieved her duffel bag from the attic, ensuring all tools were ready in case of an emergency. Then, sitting beside Ethan's bed, she watched him sleep, memorizing the peaceful rise and fall of his chest. "I'll never let anything happen to you," she whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. When dawn broke, Sarah reached out to Lisa and Mr. Harris, updating them on the situation and asking for extra vigilance. Together, they devised a plan to monitor the neighborhood closely, keeping an eye out for any sign of Victor. Meanwhile, Sarah resumed her patrols, moving silently through the streets each night, searching for clues that might lead her to him. Days turned into weeks, and though Victor's presence loomed large in her mind, he never showed himself. Eventually, the threat faded, or at least it seemed to. Authorities eventually tracked Victor to another state where he was arrested again, during a botched robbery attempt. This time he was placed under maximum security, leaving little chance for escape. When Sarah heard the news, she felt a flicker of relief, but not enough to lower her guard completely. She had learned the hard way that safety was never guaranteed, especially for people like her. As months passed, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah continued teaching self-defense classes, finding joy in helping others build confidence and strength. Ethan thrived in school, excelling academically and making new friends. Neighbors grew closer, forming bonds strengthened by shared adversity. Even the cafe where Sarah worked buzzed with renewed energy, patrons chatting and laughing as though reclaiming lost time. For Sarah, these quiet moments were precious, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of community. Yet deep down she remained vigilant, always prepared to defend her family if needed. She knew one thing for certain: if Victor or anyone else dared threaten her son again, they would learn firsthand why she was once called the most feared Navy SEAL alive. But until then, she chose to focus on the beauty of everyday life. The laughter of children, the warmth of friendship, and the promise of brighter tomorrows. In the end, Sarah's story wasn't just about survival or revenge, it was about love. Love for her son, love for her community, and love for the life she had fought so hard to protect. And as long as that love burned within her, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead.